Good evening, friends. Come on in. It's time to gather again here in the grotto for another episode of Hunting the Shadows. It's a cold, gloomy autumn night out there. It's raining and all that. It's a perfect weather for us to go hunting the shadows. We're going to have a very interesting show for you tonight. One of my favorite supernatural subjects, vampires. Almost as favorite to me as the werewolf, and they're really related, definitely. But we're going to be talking about not just vampires, but actual vampire cults. And also, I'm going to tell you about the dangerous soup. So you might want to get ready for that. I got a few things to knock out first, though, before we begin. Let me take my lid off there. And, yeah, get my eyes on here. Let's see what our comments are running here. Yes, StreamYard will let me see them. I don't know. It's kind of acting kind of weird tonight. But I've got some, but I just can't. Evidently, it's not wanting to show them to me. Oh, there we go. All right, Philip. Good to see you, sir. Crystal, Melissa, Red Pill. Good to have you. And good for you to be here. Good. And we got some more coming in. All right, we're gonna have an interesting show tonight. And like I said, vampires. We're gonna be talking a lot about vampires, and I hope you've got your cross ready just in case. Get your cross out there. There you go. And your holy water, of course, and your good old standby, which is the steak and mallet, just in case. Okay. All right. Yep. By the way, there's another much better way than this to dispatch a vampire. We'll talk about that a little bit tonight. Got to get a few things out of the way first, though. Got a few announcements to make. Hopefully, if everything goes right, next week my guest will be on Hunting the Shadows. Will be my good friend and brother William Nighthawk. We're going to get into some very interesting stuff, so you might want to put that down on your calendar. And also, I'm still taking care of production on the Midnight Road excursions into the unknown, but that's coming soon, okay? So don't give up on me. And now I've got a big announcement to make. I have another podcast in the works. And this podcast is going to be bi-monthly. That's twice a month on Friday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Time. And it's called Hunting. Let me get this up here. Give you a little take a look at it here. It's called, it's on the Hunting the Shadows. Okay. All right. Here we go. This is the horse paranormal point of view. It's literature from a paranormal perspective. We're going to be talking about books, authors, transcripts, articles, magazines, and movies. We're going to talk about movies too, because they do come from screenplays, by the way, written screenplays. So we're going to be talking about that along with some other stuff. I think you're going to find it very interesting. And like I say, it's going to be, here's another little thing for you there. That's it. That's our symbol on that one. And it's going to be, hopefully, very interesting. We're going to get into some books, my favorite things. I've often said that some of the best friends I've ever had were books. And there's a reason for that. Definitely. So when you talk about books, you're in my territory. And I have actually around me right here tonight one of the largest paranormal libraries in the southeastern United States. Okay, I've got hundreds and hundreds of books, maybe thousands, of stuff. So we're going to be talking about my favorite things, books and authors. Hopefully in the future we'll have some authors on to talk about some of their books, but I'm going to be reviewing some of their books and recommending some to you that you might want to check out. Okay. But anyway, moving right along. Let's see what you got, any more comments coming up here. StreamYard is real flaky tonight. I don't know what's going on with it. Hey, Russell. All right. Good to have you here, sir. And definitely got to get my banner going here. Hold on just a moment. Get my ticker ticking away. There we go. And I got another little photo I want to show you. Here's your typical vampire. There she is. That's the female variety. And some of them can be very enticing, definitely. And you know, one of my favorite books, here's another one of these guys here. One of my all-time favorite books, of course, is Bram Stoker's Dracula. I read it at least 4 or 5 times a year. I love it. I love the way it's laid out. Unfortunately, Bram Stoker had only really one really good book in him. Some authors do. Look at Margaret Mitchell. She had only one in her. Unfortunately, her life was cut short. She didn't have a chance to write anymore. Bram Stoker, though, was an excellent writer, and I love the way that he lays Dracula out. You know, sort of like a journal. And another book very similar to that is another favorite of mine, Frankenstein, is laid out like that as well. I don't know if Bram Stoker was a fan of Frankenstein because it came a whole lot earlier than Dracula did. But they say that the vampire story was actually born that night with a nightmare of Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley, Nightmare of Frankenstein. They were all telling ghost stories and vampire stories, all kinds of freaky stuff that night. I'd love to have been on. That's one story session I definitely would have loved to have been in on, without a doubt. That had to be a fascinating evening. Oh, definitely. Hello, Midwest Night Watchers and the Cryptid Huntress. My good friend is in here tonight. Shiro and Melissa Lester. Yeah, we're going to do a little thing about vampires tonight and the vampire cults. That's the interesting thing about some of this stuff. There are 2 types, well, there are more than 2 types, but 2 basic types of vampires when you talk about them. And that is the human vampires and the supernatural vampires. And sometimes their worlds collide and cross over each other when they do interesting things have happened. Have you ever heard of the Damnfire? The Damnfire is actually half human and half vampire. Actually, that's the way that goes. And it can either be the offspring of a male vampire and a human woman, which is usually what it is. But it can also be the offspring of a mating of a human male and a female vampire, but it's very rare. The Damnfire is usually the other way around. Now, it can be in cases of vampiric rape, or it can be love, romance, whatever the outcome of this is, you will have a Damnfire. Now, they kind of walk between worlds, these people, and a lot of Damnfires actually embrace the human side and go against the vampire side. So they turn into vampire hunters usually, or the antagonists of true full-blooded, and there's an interesting little spin on that, full-blooded vampires. So they are very interesting, the Damnfire. And you also you have, of course, Wurdelak. The Wurdelak is an interesting vampire because it basically feeds off of its own kin, mostly its own close family. That's bad. We don't want any relatives like that, do we? Definitely not. They come back and feed off of their families. The Wurdelaks which is basically a Russian type vampire, by the way, and us in Slavia too, in Slavic type vampire as well. And then you have going back to ancient Greece, you have the Volvalika, which is a very interesting thing. It can also, and there I said there's a kind of a kinship between the werewolf and the vampire. The Volvalika also has wolf attributes. And I find it very interesting that one of my favorite movies, the old Dracula, and I like Dracula movies. They're neat. I like a lot of them. But my favorite one, of course, the one with Bela Lugosi, is a classic. It's like a painting come to life when you watch it. It's so neat. It's got that shadow play, as well as the original Frankenstein does too. It's almost like watching a work of art in front of, come alive in front of you. The interesting thing about, hey, I'll see soon. The interesting thing about Dracula is that in certain aspects of that, he turns into a wolf. He can turn into a wolf and take off. And that is, I think, also mentioned, slightly mentioned in the original Dracula novel. And of course, the Dracula is supposedly the vampire can turn into a bat, of course. And here's another thing: they can turn into rats. They can be like a horde of rats. They can turn into a mist. They can do different things. They're very supernatural creatures because, really, basically, when you get into the true origin of the vampire, it is a demonic spirit. Now, I'm talking about the undead and not the living vampires. Okay. The living vampires are what we're going to get into a little bit more tonight, more so than the undead. We'll leave them for another night, maybe Halloween. Okay. But the undead are very interesting in that respect, that they are the revenant, the returning dead, the uneasy dead. They come back to haunt you in a certain way, but not as a ghost, not wispy kind of a ghost. These things have a power to them, a demonic power that is very strong and very unnatural. That's why they are supernatural, definitely. So you have that attribute when you talk about that. Now I'm not going to get into my own encounter with a vampire that I had tonight. I'll leave that for some other night because I'm sure most of you have already heard it. Don't want to get boring and start repeating myself here. But I will be, I think, telling that on my good friend Bigfoot Michigan Rob's show. He's going to have a little Halloween show. He wants me on there to tell about my vampire encounter. So it should be a very interesting show, just not because of me, but he's going to have a lot of other people and interesting stories on there as well, definitely. So anyway, the thing about Dracula that I like, there's the one great line in Dracula, one of my favorite lines, is, of course, Dracula's antagonistic is Dr. Van Helsing. And he says that, and this comes right at the scene where Van Helsing kind of, sneaks a mirror in there to see if he can see Dracula. And Dracula, of course, has a repulsion, being a vampire, to mirrors. He knocks the mirror out of his hand. And he looks at him and he says a great line. He says, "For one who has not lived a single lifetime, you are a wise man, Van Helsing." Great line. And of course, Van Helsing did him in eventually. We know how very smart Van Helsing was, don't we? He was really the hero. And here's the interesting thing about that, folks. He's one of the very, very few senior heroes. He was a senior citizen, okay? He was a very senior person. He was probably in his late 60s, early 70s, or closing in on 80. He was a senior, but yet he turned out to be sort of of course, there were other heroes in Dracula, too. There was a combination of heroes, but he was sort of the lead hero in it, and I find that very interesting. So even when you're a senior, you're still got some good use left in you, right? There you go. So anyway, especially when it comes to vampires. Hey, Chicken Legs, how you doing? Tracy, good to have you here tonight. And anyway, the thing about Dracula is that it sort of shows the dark supernatural side of it. But now what we're going to turn to are the human vampires, okay? And I've got to bring something up for you here. These are the symbols of the human vampire names, and I want you to take a real close look at that. Okay, there's a very large amount of occultic symbolism in this. And I'm not going to go individually with each one of these symbols, but there is one something that binds them all together. And I want you to take a close look at what it is. I think you may have already seen it, but I'll give you a second to check it out. There's one thing that binds all these symbols of their clans and covens together, and I'll tell you what it is. In every symbol, there's a drop of blood, a representation of blood. And as it said in Dracula, the blood is the life. Okay? And it definitely is. But these beings, even the human vampires, are all concerned with sustenance. Energy eaters, they are, you might as well say. That is what they basically are, energy eaters. And they don't care where they or how they get that energy. Okay, they can usually hunt you down if they want to, but the human vampires, that's your supernatural vampire. Of course, they're repulsed by holy objects. Um, your human vampires are somewhat different. Okay, the human vampire is basically, well, he's human, of course, but he's basically kind of the way he goes about things. He takes it differently than the supernatural vampire does. Okay, let's put it that way. Let me get my comments back up here. And if you've got any questions or anything as we go along here, just be sure to ask, chime in whatever you want. I'm watching the comments here. Hi, Scott. Let's go over the common types of human vampires. Okay. Well, some of them are the blood drinkers. They are the ones concerned with actually drinking each other or sometimes their own human blood. They are attracted to the blood. They have almost a narcotic effect upon them in that respect. Then you have the emphatic vampires. They are the ones that just want to lead a vampire lifestyle. They're more they can be goth and kind of go out of goth into the vampiric lifestyle. Okay, then you have disfigured vampires. These are considered to be a lower caste of vampires. They're sort of just in it for the thrills and stuff like that, you know. And they call them disfigured because they're sort of they're not the true actual manifestation of the vampire in the eyes of the true vampire, human vampires. Now we're talking human here, not undead, all right? Then you have the genetic vampires. There's something in their makeup that makes them thirst after blood or want to be this way or repulsed to light. You know, and there are theories that perhaps the vampire legends began. The vampire legend is found all over the world, folks, in almost every single culture. The revenant, the returning dead, but also there may have been all along certain human beings who had tendencies for this. And there are, they say, certain diseases that can mimic a lot of this stuff. And one of them is lupus, by the way, supposedly. That's just a theory that a lot of people put forth. Okay, then you have the insane vampires. These are people who are really going bonkers on that. They actually will attack people sometimes. They actually believe themselves to be true vampires. Then you have the psi vampires. They are the psychic vampires. They don't go after blood. They kind of go after you psychically. They take your psychic energy from you in that respect. Then you have sexual vampires. They feed off of the energy of sex. That's what they do. That's sort of their thing. All of these folks are, well, like I said, they're energy eaters. They're some type of energy, whatever it is they're going after. Then you have soul vampires. They are some of the most dangerous because they go after the life essence of the soul. They feed off of that. If you've ever met anyone like that, like the psi vampires or the soul vampires, you feel like you've been drained. You feel weak after you meet somebody like that. You could have possibly run into this type of a vampire, definitely, without doubt. The interesting thing about that is, good evening, uh, Vlad, you're on my food. There you go. That's, of course, the supernatural vampire. Now, the human vampires have clans and cults. Um, some of them are basically um, sort of like you see in the movie Twilight. You remember the Twilight series? They call themselves a coven. That is actually a vampire group, a coven. But then they have another one, which is basically called the anarchists. Anarchs are the lone vampires. They wander alone. They're not involved with a group or anything like that. The cults are also like can be gangs of vampires, sort of like the Crips and the Bloods, but yet these are vampires. They're sort of the gang vampires. They're sort of the rougher, the Hell's Angels of the vampire world. They're the bad. They're pretty bad dudes, but they're basically involved in the vampirism thing going on. So you have that as well. But now the covens are usually are comprised of very intelligent people who guard their secrets very well. You go from a level of secrecy on down to the anarchs. The anarchs don't really care to even hide. Some of them don't hide their secret lifestyle. They are known, and there have been some reports of anarchs attacking people on the streets of New Orleans. Oh yeah, and we're talking about biting people in the neck, kind of an attack. So you've got some really wild cards out there in the vampire world, the cults. And the interesting thing about the cults and like those symbols I showed you earlier, they know each other. They have their symbolism. They have their own covens. Each coven has its own symbol. And when we're not, it's very different than the witches' coven. The witches' coven is somewhat held somewhat differently than the actual vampires are, but I think they're very related in some aspects in their very cultic attributes that they put forth. But the one thing about the cults is that they guard their secrecy well. It's very much like back in the old days, the old South, the KKK, the Ku Klux Klan. Now, why did they wear the hoods? Because they kept their identity secret. Okay, it was all, and these cults, just like a lot of the witchcraft cults and a lot of the satanic cults that are operating today. And I think there's like just where I'm at in this rather mid-sized town, there's 3 or 4 covens. There's voodoo. There's a lot of this stuff going on. I mean, this stuff is real, folks, and it's in your neighborhood, okay? It's not that far from you, wherever you're at tonight. You're going to have some of this. And you also have the very secret, mysterious world of the vampire cults, okay? And they're also into sacrifice in many aspects. Because they are out for blood, they are out for the energy, the life essence of the soul. They feed off of this. And I consider the vampires different than the werewolves for one very important fact. The vampire is more like, and that includes human and undead vampires, it's more like a symbiotic relationship. They are like a leech or a tick. They live off of you. They're truly energy eaters. Basically, that's the only word you can really give them, whatever that energy may be. And they're attracted, a lot of this is attracted to blood. Now, there's the interesting thing about blood, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. Is being a vampire, say David wants to know, is being a vampire all personal choice, desires, or is there a transformation in heaven? If so, how? Well, the human vampire, David, has a choice. They choose to become a vampire. They choose to embrace that lifestyle and join this cult with other like-minded individuals. And that is the basic tenets of a cult. Although these parasites, and that's what they are, they're living this parasitic type of a lifestyle, living off of someone else. You might consider all of humankind to be parasites because we live off of something, whether it be plant food or animals, whatever, or eggs or whatever the food you eat. As you're living off of something, it is kind of parasitic in that way, but this takes it one step further because these people are parasitic to humans and not the other way around. Okay, they're parasitic in that way. The Book of Jude describes vampires, shadows, demons that come and sit on people. Yeah, those are the undead, definitely, Mike Jones. Those are the type of but now the human vampires, like I say, they have their underground cults, their covens. They guard their secrets well. They guard each other well. They look out. They've got each other's back, just like soldiers in the military or policemen in the field, whatever the case. You got to have your partner's back, because it's very important that you have your partner's back because he's got yours too. And that's the way these vampires work. So when you run into the vampire cults, you run into a wall of secrecy. Especially the ones that are actual true cults. Now, there are some, like I mentioned earlier, that are just attracted to the lifestyle. They may actually taste a little blood once in a while, but they think it's real groovy as the old word used to be. They think it's real cool to be a vampire, to live that lifestyle. They're attracted to it. There's a darkness in it to it that attracts them. Let me say something about all this, folks. There is a darkness to this, okay? And I mean a deep darkness. When you want to live this type of a lifestyle, you venerate death. You go after blood. You're all for this. You're for the sacrifices and all this stuff. Now, when you get into the vampire cult, and we don't really truly know how many human sacrifices go into these cults and never come out again. Okay, we really don't know because, like I say, you run into this wall of secrecy. I have seen FBI reports where the FBI has tried to infiltrate some of these vampire cults and failed at it. That's how good they are at their secrecy. They guard themselves very well. They look out for each other. I kind of admire them in a way for that because they're tenacious in that respect, definitely. Now, the interesting thing about this is very much like the Hells Angels motorcycle club, okay? They're a bunch of bad guys, but they're really hanging out and they're looking out for each other. They're still brothers, okay? And that's the way you got to look at the vampire cults. They're brothers and sisters of the same religion, you might say. But it's a very weird, very strange, and very dark type of a religion. But that's what you call a cult, okay? And look at many religions. You could classify some of them as cults. I won't get into that tonight, but that's an interesting aspect of all this stuff. When you think about Charles Manson and stuff like that, how far over into darkness this stuff can go and all that. But now the interesting thing about it is that attraction of the blood. It's the blood thing going on all the time. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And I'm going to tell you about, when I tell you about the dangerous soup, okay? You're going to want to listen to that very closely. It's very interesting. But Mike Jones when I was in Mexico, several young witches were found dead and dug up graves. They dabbled with the wrong side. Oh, yeah. You got a lot of that, and I'm going to be talking about that pretty soon because this is the season of the witch. Halloween is the season of the witch. Definitely, without a doubt. And there's a lot of bad stuff because I'm going to tell you something about Halloween, folks, okay? It's not... once upon a time, it was kids dressing up and begging for candy, okay? But there's a very far darker side to this night, this season, than people realize. And they really would be scared to find out the real truth of the deaths and the disappearances that happen on that night, the sacrifices that take place, the things that are done. It's not good. This is not a really, truly bright, kind of happy holiday, okay, folks? It is the devil's night, you might say, in that respect. It does have its side for the kids to dress up and make believe. There's nothing wrong with that. Eating candy till they get sick, bro. Probably. I remember when I was a kid, we could really hit the candy thing, but it's not that anymore. It's become even more darker The name of the holiday, by the way, is truly Samhain. That's how you pronounce it. Some people say it thinks it's pronounced Samhain, but no, it's Samhain. It's a Celtic name, and as you listen to the sound Samhain and Halloween. See, there you go. That's where we get the word Halloween from. All Hallows Eve, and Samhain is one of the darkest nights of the year, especially cult wise. Okay, and we're moving very close to that in a couple of weeks here. We're getting close to that, definitely. Uh, yeah, the beginning of the cult calendar, definitely, Red Pill. And there are other holidays that follow that, but I won't get into that now. But anyway, getting back to the vampires, the human vampires. The interesting thing about them is that a lot of them think, they embrace the goth lifestyle and they think it's very cool and it's neat. But look at the way they dress. They dress always in black. They kind of venerate death. They look at the darkness, the horror, the and all that stuff. They embrace it, but they become almost an obsession with them. And anytime you get obsessed with anything, I don't care what it is, you're moving in the territory of mental illness here. Okay, so I'm gonna make that perfectly clear. Uh, that you don't want to do. You don't want to get obsessed with anything, whatever the situation may be, because it can lead you down the dark, bad road. Okay, and that's what happens with a lot of these people, young people, especially in these vampire cults. But I'm saying there's two different types of human vampires in this. They're the ones in it for the fun, the cool. They like the lifestyle, all right? But then there's the other side that they're deadly serious about. These are true human vampires. They may live off of energy or the essence of the soul, or they may take the blood. The blood is the symbol. Remember all those symbols I showed you earlier? All those drops of blood. You ever see a symbol with that drop in there? That is a definite giveaway, okay? That is a vampiric symbol. That's their symbol, that drop of blood. Okay. I'm gonna pull that up again and let you take another look at that. These are the symbols of the vampire cults and all that. If I can get StreamYard to work for me. Take a look at these symbols again, and you'll see the relationship I'm talking about. Every one of them has got that drop of blood signifying in there somewhere. Just about every single one of them, I think, has that drop of blood symbol. That's their main symbol, okay? If you ever see that drop of blood, and I've seen people tattooed with it, by the way. And I think one of their major symbols is can be a quarter moon with a drip, the blood dripping off of it, the one single drop of blood from it. That's another one. There are many different types. And like I said, there are many different cults, and each one has its own symbol, but they all are banded together with that drop of blood, okay? That's their main symbol, like the Christian cross or the Muslim crescent or whichever, religious thing. That's their symbol, that drop of blood. The blood is the life, and they are concerned with life and death in that respect. And that is the darkness of these vampire cults. And we don't know how many people probably disappear into these things and never come back out again. There are the participants and there are the victims, and they look upon you as sustenance. Okay, that's a dangerous way to look at your fellow human beings. Okay, as a food source, but they look upon you that way, and that's the way they want to use you. Definitely. So anyway, the main thing is to be very careful and be observant, because they communicate with symbols. Okay, that's how they mark areas and mark places. This is ours or this is yours, whatever. You see the Bloods and the Crips. When I was in law enforcement, we looked for their signs and symbols. We knew their things, the colored handkerchiefs they had, all the different things that they did were symbols. Okay, hey Juno, they were symbols of signals to each other. And that's why a symbol is called a signal. They're to let you know something. They're an unwritten language. They're the signs of a language, you might say, a sign language. Definitely. All right. By the way, I found that Circle V symbol at Orange Park. Oh yeah, the Circle V symbol is the chief one. Definitely. And I meant to bring it up tonight, but I forgot it. But that the Circle V, and the V can also be inverted. And also, by the way, that stands also for the demon Asmodeus. If you turn it around, it looks like a big A, a red A. That's his symbol, by the way. And he is supposed to be sort of a demon patron of the vampire, okay? Because the vampire has a certain connection to lust and sex, okay? That's the way the vampire works. It can entice you sexually that way to get you in its power and all that. Now, like when I ran into, and I'll say this right quick, when I had that encounter with the female vampire I had, it's a good thing I never did look her in the eyes. Usually I look people in the eyes when I talk to them. That's just my normal habit of doing things. I look them in the eyes, I watch their face. For some reason, I didn't look at her that day. I don't know why. Maybe it's a good thing I didn't, because the power of the vampire is in his eyes, okay? They can mesmerize you, but also they sort of seduce you, whether you're male or female, whichever the case may be. They can seduce you, whether it's a female or male vampire doing the seducing. They seduce you, get you in their power, and then they can overwhelm you that way. And you are a true victim to them on that. So now let's keep an eye on missing homeless people, young people in the area. Derek, keep me updated, okay? Yeah, that's the one thing about this. The homeless people are definitely sort of the fast food for these vampire cults and these witchcraft cults or satanic cults and all this. And I kind of put them all together, although they're different in the way they operate. I still put them all together because they are actually the protagonist of the human race, okay? They are actually working for the bad guys, okay? And that's what I said about what's going on tonight in Israel. If you kind of stand up for the Palestinians and cutting babies' heads off and all that, you're on the wrong side, folks. I hate to tell you that. You're on the side of darkness in this world. Okay, get away from that. Don't get on that side. Head back to the light. But that's what these guys are, and these covens and these cults. They're on the bad side. Definitely. That pill also represents the spirit. Definitely, holy oil is a good remedy against a lot of this stuff. Also, holy water. I like oil too, very well. As long as it's blessed, that's the main thing. I like to have it blessed twice, actually. That's just me. But anyway, that's the way I go with that. Definitely. But anyway, the interesting thing about these cults is, like I said, their absolute secrecy. It makes them so much more deadly. If they're, you can find out a lot more about the Masons than you can definitely find out about the vampire cults. Okay, they're more open, believe it or not, than this. Definitely, without a doubt. So that's what you run into, that secrecy, that wall of secrecy. That's what they hide behind. That's the way they operate, And of course, they couldn't have anything without the secrecy. By the way, I'll read you a little quick thing here since you brought that up, Red Pill. Listen to this. Cold iron against evil, hot steel against men, silver against darkness, the battle to win. Bless twice the holy water, hold the shining cross high, sea salt against the shadows that wander too nigh. The armor of light is the most important of keys, but the sword of true faith is the greatest of these. And that's the way that runs, folks, definitely, without a doubt. If you run into this evil, be very, very careful, because it can not only harm you physically, but spiritually as well, and mentally and emotionally. Okay, that's the way these things work. Now look what I said about some of these types of vampires, getting you with the mesmerizing eyes and all that. That mesmerism that they use on you be very careful. They can play on your emotions, that seductive sexual content about them. I have talked to a lot of women about this, and they say, and the women are drawn to the vampire symbol a lot because of that sexual seductiveness thing that puts forth, that sensual output, that animalistic thing. A lot of women are drawn to that against their will sometimes, and the vampire knows that, and it works the other way with males too. By the way, I'm not just putting this all on the females. Okay, it works that way with the males as well. So you got to be very careful what you're dealing with when you come up against these sort of type of vampires. Okay, now I'm going to turn to the dangerous soup. Okay. Now, back many years ago, there used to be a show on TV. I used to love to watch it a lot. It was called Are You Afraid of the Dark? And what was so neat about this group of kids, young kids called the Midnight Club, they would meet around a campfire and tell stories, to kind of scary stories to freak each other out. And one of the stories that was told was the tale of the dangerous soup. And let me tell you, lay this out right quick for you. In the tale of the dangerous soup, there was this guy who ran a restaurant. And everybody loved this new soup that he had. He called it the dangerous soup. Oh, they would pay $100 a bowl for the soup. Oh, they loved it. It was almost like a narcotic. But you come to find out during the story where the actual ingredients for this soup came from. And what this guy had, he was kind of a bad guy. His name was Dr. Vink. And Dr. Vink would actually get victims and put them in this room with a gargoyle type statue. And this gargoyle would extract fear out of these people. And the fear would drop in a vial, one drop at a time. And he would add this fear to the soup. Now, listen to this, the dangerous soup. He would add this to the soup. Everybody loved it because everybody likes a little taste of fear. Look at all the horror movies and the haunted houses at Halloween. People they love to get scared. There's that certain element of getting scared that kind of rings your bell. You know what I'm saying? And that's what they loved about this soup. Well, let me tell you something about the dangerous soup, okay? There is a true dangerous soup, and it is the blood of children especially. It's the blood of children who have been exposed to danger, torture, fear. Fear that goes into their blood. And blood is blood, but when it has that additive to it, the vampires love that most of all. That taste of adrenochrome, as some people call it. It has different names, but that taste of fear in the blood is what they love. That, like I said, it's like catnip to a cat. It's like a narcotic to them. They love that, and that's what they look for. And that's where a lot of these little kids, unfortunately, end up being the prey of these vampire cults and some of these satanic cults as well. That's right. See what Stephen says, but when I've been trying to keep my connection, holy water and holy oil do wonders. Definitely. Absolutely. Olive Garden bread is great with a good Dennis Carroll story. Oh, thank you. Well, at least I entertain you a little bit. But that's the interesting thing about this dangerous soup, I call it. That's what they're looking for. They live off of that. They live for it. And they don't care how they get it, okay? And with this veil of secrecy that surrounds them, they have free reign to do some of these things that they do. Now, of course, they can also get it from grown people as well, but the young blood is the best. But if they can get it off the older ones, like the homeless people and all that, they'll go for that too. Blood is blood, after all, is it not? And that is a definite draw to these people. And some say that the reptilians, and I consider the reptilians to be demonic, also are drawn to this. The blood is the life, as it says in Dracula and the Bible. The blood is the life. And that's what they're living off of, the life essence. That's what they go for, these energy feeders, these parasites of the human race. That's what they're out for. And these are just the human vampires, folks. That's bad enough, especially when you run into the supernatural vampires You may have really had it, and we'll definitely do a show on that one night. Definitely will, without a doubt. Okay, if there's anybody's got any more questions out there, my son lives hearing about the woo and the monsters of our universe. Gotta teach him that. They don't want mine, it still glows. I wasn't doubting that, Hawker probably does. Tracy could probably use you for a nightlight. Okay. So anyway, let's see what we got here. Okay, now if you're going to protect yourself against vampires, whether they be human or supernatural, there are certain things you can do to protect yourself. And the basic thing about the human vampires is do not put yourself in their neighborhood. Okay, don't try to hang around areas where they may frequent. Don't become attracted to their lifestyle. Don't mess with them. The more involved you get in negativity, the more negative is drawn to you. Okay, you got to remember that. Keep your life as free of this negativity as possible. Keep your life full of light and goodness and peace. That does the work to keep these things away from you. Do vampires work with any alien races that you know of? I have heard that they are in league with the reptilians. Okay, without a doubt. I don't know about the Greys, but they say that supposedly the reptilians definitely have a coalition with the vampires. Supposedly, I wouldn't be surprised if the Greys don't either. By the way, without a doubt. But anyway, you don't put yourself in a position where these things will attack you. Okay, you keep that positive life going, keep that positive lifestyle. Go to church, whatever, pray, whatever you need to do to keep this negativity at bay, and it keeps back the darkness and light. Truth and light are the only things that will proactively fight this darkness. Okay. But when you come to human vampires, it might be good to also pack a weapon. Definitely. I'm going to tell you what, folks, and I'm not just saying this. I'm a big believer in the Second Amendment, but I do not go anywhere unarmed anymore. I don't even go out in my yard unarmed anymore because you do not know now in this world what you're going to run into. Okay. And it is a dangerous, dangerous place out there. Okay. And I'm not telling you to live in fear. No. We need to have a spirit of courage, not fear and not anxiety. But a foolish man does not prepare. Okay? A foolish person is unprepared. And we want to be prepared for any eventuality. Because, like I said, it is a very dangerous world out there. Very dangerous. And we need to realize that. Hey, Angelique, how you doing? We need to realize that, okay? That's what's going on over there. Dennis, you ever think going back to the graveyard check see if still there? I'm going to definitely check that out next time I'm in Charleston, without a doubt. Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. If she does show up again, I'll get a selfie with her, okay? If I can. You never know about that. But anyway, she was a strange young lady, without a doubt, whether she was a true vampire or what. Without a doubt, she gave me some very, very bad, heavy vibes there, okay? Put it that way. But anyway, okay, Nighthawk, see you later. And Nighthawk's going to be on the show very soon, folks. And we're going to have definitely an interesting conversation coming up on that. Everything going on in Israel, I would love to hear about the golem on that. Okay, well, we'll talk about the golem on that, definitely. That is a very interesting facet of Jewish folklore. I've studied a lot of Jewish folklore, like Lilith and the golem and the golem, and all. The golem is actually a sort of like a prototype of a robot, actually, when you think of it that way. So the golem is very interesting. So there's a lot of Jewish folklore, like the Dybbuk boxes and all that I've always been interested in, definitely. But like I said, like and share us out, and tell everybody about our show, Hunting the Shadows. And we're always going to have some interesting conversations going on here, definitely, without a doubt. So anytime you want to tune in, and did you see the Cloak Lady, Shadow Owl, Woman, Night Hags? I have actually run into an entity one night that was on a house. I have to tell about it sometime. That was on a person's house where they were having some paranormal activity, and this was a shadow, and that was on top of the house, and it was rather large. I would say human-sized shadow, put it that way, and it looked like it had wings. Now, it was not an angel, okay? This thing definitely did not put off angelic vibes, okay? But I'll talk about that one night. Definitely was an interesting incident. Um, after 40 years of study, okay. Well, the more you study, Mike, and get into these things, the more interesting it becomes. Definitely, it's the subjects of the supernatural, and I've been involved in them for 55 plus years now, I guess. Not only as a parapsychologist and as a doctor of metaphysics, but I've also been interested in it as an investigator. When I first started out investigating, I went to the pros to learn how to investigate, and I look upon a lot of these things as crime scenes. The way you get, and I kind of investigate them and research them that way too. What's telling me here? What's the story? What's going on here? What are the patterns? The clues and the patterns that you look for. So it's very interesting. It never gets old, Mike. Never does. Okay, I've had a lot of personal experiences, Russell. Definitely, I will get into those when people keep telling me you need to write a book about that. Definitely, and I'm going to have to do that definitely because I have some interesting stuff. But I'm going to be telling a lot of this on my video series, The Midnight Road: Excursions into the Unknown. I'm going to be talking about some of my most interesting cases, like the case of the witch's remains or the white thing. There's going to be some interesting cases on there, and I think sure they're going to be 15-minute videos, and they will be available on Hunting the Shadows YouTube channel for free. Okay, and so that's coming up. I got to begin production very soon on these, and I'm going to try to go to some of the places where this actually happened to do the videos. Do you think the current Pope is evil? A lot of people do. I do not like him. Okay, that's just my own personal opinion. You can take that to the bank. I don't like the guy. There's something about him, like those bad vibes I talked about. There's something there I don't particularly care for. Pope John Paul II was good. Yeah, I liked him. He was so very much like trying to be a true man of God. The only really true man of God that was a pope was the first one, Peter. Okay. But anyway, I won't get into that. But the Catholic Church is a very big bureaucracy. Okay. Oh, war criminal. Good to have you here. Definitely. The interesting thing about it, you've got some questions now. Start hitting me up here. We're going to close out with some questions. Definitely. I love questions. To me, the interesting thing about the vampire is he is a human image, only taking into a diabolical direction. And it kind of throws you off in that way. The werewolf looks bad. He's a big, mean-looking wolf-like creature. But the vampire looks kind of like you and me a little bit. Only maybe so worse, though. Well, hopefully. Anyway, it's kind of a human image taken one step further into the supernatural kind of thing about it. I'm more interested, although the vampire cults are fascinating, I'm a supernaturalist. I'm more interested in the supernatural aspects of the real vampires, definitely. You can find a copy of that. Are you talking about what I read just a few minutes ago there, Red Pill? Let me know. Oh, she knows the notification sent to midnight. No, really? I wonder what happened there, Candy Wolf. YouTube should be. Make sure you're signed up on YouTube now, Candy Wolf. Make sure you're signed up there. Hey, Raymond. It will supposed to notify you when we come on with the show, and it should be notifying everybody when we do Paranormal Point of View on Friday the 13th. I picked I especially had to hit Friday the 13th on that. Okay. Yeah. Okay. You're talking about that red belt. Okay. It's on my Facebook, sir. If you want to go look up my Facebook page, you will find it on there. It comes from a book I'm writing, actually, called the Van Helsing Chronicles. It's a book I'm thinking about writing. It's sort of a fiction. It's not a nonfiction. Anyway, it's there definitely if you want it, but it's taken. It's actually taken from folklore and the true remedies of how you deal with these dark supernatural entities, without a doubt. But the thing about I was going to say this right quick since it came up in the comments there. The thing about the holy oil and the holy water, okay. The holy water is good for like splashing on, putting on stuff, very quickly. The holy oil is really mostly used for anointing either an object or a person for a more, shall we say, permanent blessing type thing. Holy water is sort of a temporary kind of thing. You see, that's kind of the difference in between that, okay? I just wanted to clarify that. Anyway, yeah, make sure you subscribe. If you subscribe, it will definitely notify you when the show's coming on, okay? And so next week we're going to be hopefully we'll have Nighthawk on here, and we're going to talk more about Halloween and some of the things that's going on Halloween and stuff like that. Definitely, without a doubt. And the thing to look for is we will definitely be doing a kind of a Halloween themed thing. I think if we can definitely talk about that. Do you think the population of cryptids, vampire, and shadow people is growing? Absolutely. I think someone, Candy, has cracked open the doors of hell. Okay, there's definitely, without a doubt, an increase in this stuff. Not just because we're noticing it more now than others. Some people say it's more talked about now, but I think talking about it also increases it. Unfortunately. That's why, as demonologists have always said, we do not like to mention the names of demons because it gets their attention. And you definitely don't want the attention of some things in this world, okay? Without a doubt, they can make life very hard on you. I didn't see that about the eclipse there. Hold on a minute. Let's see, we go back. See, I don't see that about the eclipse. I must have missed it somewhere here. Right. Yeah, they did kind of look like bad wings, by the way. There, Mike Jones, the shadow I saw, it just kind of gave me that feeling. It wasn't an owl, or it wasn't a vulture or anything like that. See, I'm sorry, I missed your thing. You might want. Can you ask me that again about the eclipse, there, bud? I can't seem to find your. Well, I'll tell you something about eclipses, okay? Whether it be a moon eclipse of the moon or the sun, usually the sun is worse than the moon kind of eclipse, and I'll tell you why. That's when darkness falls over the land unnaturally. And when you have an unnatural darkness, you have a rise in unnatural things, okay? I got interviewed by USA Today one time about that big eclipse we had a few years back, and I said that's the one thing you watch out for, is that, when that unnatural darkness falls over the land, you have a rise in unnatural entities and things and stuff going on. Philip says, Vlad Impaler is an interesting figure of history associated with him. Yeah, definitely. I think he got a bad rep because he liked to impale people. And what do vampires do? They impale people with their fangs, right? I have actually seen instances where the vampire spirits that inhabit people, demonic spirits, can actually give them fangs, can actually change their whole structure, like in certain ways. When you have unwanted attention to open doors, you never know what will come through, Stephen says. Absolutely. My John the Burnt, the names of demons once after not spark, later woke up to a false raging fire, not hot and fizzled out after I took it outside. Demons love to play games with you, Mike, definitely. And they're good at that. But there's a lot of it's theatrics trying to freak you out and create that negativity that they want so badly. And they don't care how they create it as long as they get it, because they are like vampires. They feed off of negativity. That's what their energy, that's what makes them that way. Fear, anxiety, worry, mental illness, all the trauma, all this stuff, they feed off of it. That's what they want. And the more they get, the more they want, like kids with candy. Definitely. Well, the eclipse have effect on the active. Okay, yeah, that's what I said earlier. When that unnatural darkness falls, you can look for unnatural stuff to happen. Okay, definitely. That's what, there's a lot more activity, demonic activity on nights of a new moon when there is no light. When there is some semblance of light on the world, it kind of holds that darkness back a little bit, okay, in many instances. That's why when I was in law enforcement, we always also dreaded nights of a full moon, because you had a lot of crazy stuff going on then. You didn't actually, you might have had some evil too, but you had a lot of crazier stuff. But on nights of the dark of the moon, things get really freaky and very dark and kind of evil-like stuff going on. That just seems to be a natural order of things, or unnatural, supernatural, you might say. All right, well, I'm going to close it out here, folks. And it's really been an interesting evening. And it's time to pack it up. But that's true, Mike. The good news is Jesus has already been, absolutely. He's the one that done it. Okay, definitely. And now there's a new moon. Oh, yeah. We got to watch out for that. Definitely. Well, I appreciate all your comments and for all you showing up tonight. Okay. Your family, definitely. And I want you to always know that. And you are mostly appreciated, definitely, without a doubt. Most appreciated. And for you to be here and enjoying in our conversation, it's just like friends sitting around the table, having a good conversation. That's what I like. Or maybe telling some stories around the campfire. That's another interesting thing about it. And please join me this Friday night, Friday the 13th at 8 p.m. on the YouTube channel. That's the Hunting the Shadows YouTube channel for Supernatural POV, point of view, okay? We're going to talk about some books. We're going to talk about some, you're going to like some of these movies I'm going to talk about, okay? I'm going to be telling about some very great, some good stuff. You don't want to miss the Paranormal POV, okay? 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Be there and be aware, okay? And, all right, and appreciate all of you showing up and joining in the conversation tonight. And without a doubt, it's been a very interesting evening. And I hope you all have a rest of the good. This is kind of hump day, so it's downhill hopefully after this. And the rest of the week goes good for you. And I'm going to leave you with these words. When the old Dracula used to play, they would come on, and at the end of the movie, the guy that played Van Helsing, Edward Sloan, Van Sloan, by the way, Edward Sloan would come out, and this is what he would say, okay? And I always love this. This has unfortunately been lost now. They don't have this. They just remember they've got the audio, but not the video on it. It's okay. But he would come out from the curtains, and this is what he would say. Just a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Just a moment before you leave. We don't want these visions of Dracula to leave you with bad dreams. So if you go home tonight, you may be a little anxious, a little worried. You may dread to look behind the curtains or afraid to see a face at the window. Well, pull yourself together and remember, after all, there are such things. Until we meet again, my friends, via Con Diaz. Hunting the Shadows.